The church gives us John the Baptist this morning, and I want to say a word about John the Baptist, and then I want to say something about the words he gives to us. So first of all, we've always considered, in the New Testament considers John the Baptist to be a prophet. He doesn't call himself that specifically. That's the way we see him. And the prophets, that was something unique to Israel. No other religion really had prophets in the way that Israel did. And the history of the prophets is somewhat long and intricate, and what I'm going to say about the prophets is very simplistic. All right? There's a lot more that can be said about prophets. But there was always something odd about the prophets, something apart, that they lived in a certain way, different than others. They might look different. They certainly always, for the most part, had jarring words, because most of the time they were calling Israel back to God, you know, and correcting them. And which is why often that their words seem rather harsh. Now, that's not always the case, right? But often. And John the Baptist falls into that kind of prophet, right? And the prophets were responsible, they answered to God and God alone, really. Which is another reason why they often speak up in ways that would surprise us, you know. For instance, I really couldn't get away with calling you all a brood of vipers. I think the place would empty out fairly quickly, right? Because the prophets didn't have to have a relationship with the people the way I, as a pastor, have to have a relationship with you, right? So I have to find a way of speaking the truth without just slapping you, you know. And so John calls people back to God, right? And John was a rather strange figure to us, certainly, and probably even a little bit strange to Israel. Living in the desert, dressed as he was, a cloak of camel's hair, you know, eating locusts and wild honey. That was extreme even for Israel's prophets. And the response of the prophets was, there were kind of three responses we see generally in the scriptures. One, they would ignore them, they would listen to them, and or they would reject them and often kill them. Right? And so those responses are available to us as well, and I'll talk about that. Let me just talk now about what's John saying to us. I want to talk about just kind of two words that John brings to us. First, the word is repent. Repent, the kingdom of heaven is near, right? And we hear that word repent in two ways. One, as we hear it, as stop doing a particular thing, turn away from a particular action, some kind of sinful action, you know. But literally it means go beyond your mind, metanoete. Change your way of thinking. We get into thinking as, you know, into our own ways of thinking in earthly ways, etc., right? So get beyond that and start thinking about things the way God thinks of them. Right? And the second word he brings is a word that is attributed to him by Matthew from Isaiah. Prepare the way of the Lord. Make straight his paths. And so, in other words, what is in the way of Jesus coming to you? You know, clear that way out. What I like about both of these words is how unspecific they are. And the reason I like that is because whatever it is of which you have to repent, and I have to repent, and each of us have to repent, it's going to likely be different. You know, if I put it in our terms, we all probably need to go to confession, but for different reasons. Your confession will sound different than the person next to you. It will sound different than mine, etc. You know? And the same thing about the second one. Make straight, clear out a path so God can come to you. Specifically so Jesus can come to you. The thing that I need to clear out is probably different than the thing you need to clear out. Right? And so each of us has that to answer. Right? And so what I would suggest to you, a couple things. One, imagine John coming to you yourself, personally. Imagine John looking you in the eye and he says, repent. What is he talking about? You know? I suggest that you ask yourself that question. Of what is he telling me to repent? And secondly, that John comes to you and says, make straight the way of the Lord. And so, imagine him looking at you straight in the eye and saying that. And so you say, okay, what is it I do? Specifically, what in my life is in the way of Jesus coming to me? And then to go back to repent again, in the sense of changing the way I think. What are my thoughts that aren't God's thoughts? Am I thinking in earthly ways that I should approach this with heavenly way of thinking? You know? And I would strongly encourage you, so here are your three responses. You know, you can ignore him, you can walk out of here, it's like, yeah, Mass is nice, and now let's get on to what the rest of my week is going to be about, you know. You can reject him, you can kill him, you can say, I'm not interested, you know. Or you can heed his words, you can listen to him, take him seriously, and see where that leads you. And I would encourage you, obviously, to take the third path. Don't reject John. Don't ignore John. Listen to John. Have a conversation with him this week and let him prepare you and help you prepare more for Jesus' coming.